we start this video, I need you to go over to dftba.com/weirdlinks and check out the really amazing merch that I drew. Whee! If you didn't know that I drew Sushi Cat t-shirts, then you need to get your booty over to dftba.com/weirdlinks so that you and me can match. Go ahead and check that out, and now back to the video. What's up, weirdlings? Hi, my name is Danielle Dalvarona, and today we are going to be talking about my second favorite thing besides cats: paper. Yes, paper. Please. I've always been obsessed with the way that paper feels, and sometimes paper feel directly inspires what I'm gonna be drawing. The three things that I want to talk to you guys about paper are poundage, tooth, and use. So let's get started with that. So why do you need to know paper poundage? Well, part of the reason is because it's put on most of your sketchbooks. Now, what does that weird little number mean? This does not weigh 98 pounds. Paper poundage is directly correlated to the quality of paper. So anytime that you see a paper that has a poundage listed, then that means it's at least mild to medium quality. This particular sketchbook is a mixed media sketchbook, and it's 98 pounds. That means that a whole ream of this, or 500 pieces of this piece of paper, whenever cut and placed on top of each other, are going to weigh 98 pounds. I'm not talking about 500 tiny little bits of this paper either. I'm talking about these really big, huge pieces of paper that they make in the warehouses that these papers are made. So 500 of those buddies stacked on top of each other will weigh 98 pounds. Now, a good quality paper is going to weigh 120 pounds, and an amazing quality paper, like pristine status paper, is going to weigh 300 pounds or more. That is something to consider when you're looking for paper in a store or online so that you know what kind of paper you're getting. Now, if the sketchbook or the thing that you are looking for does not have a poundage marker on the paper, it is not high quality. That is something very important to note. So for me, I use crappy sketchbooks. The only reason that I would use a really great sketchbook is if the paper feel to me is inspiring. I really loved this particular sketchbook. The size is amazing. The hardcover is super important because I'm a really terrible person about ruining these cardboard kind of sketchbooky covers. This part on the back is already starting to come undone, and I've had this sketchbook for like 2 weeks. What I was saying before was this particular sketchbook does not have any poundage markers, so this one was a really kind of poopy little sketchbook, but I absolutely love the way that the texture of the paper feels, so I got it. I think it's really important to note that sketchbook paper can be anything you want it to be. It doesn't have to be high quality because sketchbooks are usually meant for ideas and fleshing things out, writing a whole bunch of crap down whenever you need to remember your inspiration, like, you know, sticking hands where feet should be and stuff. I don't think that needs to be on high quality paper to get your point across to yourself, or you know, to like get things going. I really appreciate that you guys are paying attention through all of this. But now we're going to talk about tooth. So the tooth of the paper is not the fangs of the paper. The tooth of the paper is going to be the texture and what it feels like. The higher the poundage, the better the quality of paper, right? So sometimes in tandem with that, the more toothy and texture the paper will be. You can get high quality paper that is hot pressed. However, I find myself constantly looking for high quality cold pressed paper because it looks so much more painterly and artistic, and I really appreciate that aesthetic. So let's start with the tooth of my sketchbook, and then we'll kind of like go up gradually from there, and I can tell you about all the different materials that go with those things. So as we were talking about with this particular sketchbook, it's very smooth. This is mixed media paper. So mixed media paper is different than sketchbook paper in that it has more tooth. Things like marker paper and bristle board are not going to have tooth. They're going to be super smooth. It's like drawing on ice. It's really great for things like inking and pen work and doing some really crisp and clean line work. This stuff is incredible. Another thing to remember about smooth paper is that it is not as absorbent as toothed paper. So any materials that you're going to be using on top of it should be materials that don't have to absorb a ton. I will say marker paper is much better for Copics and other things like that than the Bristol board. It is much slicker, and you can layer a lot better on top of it without losing your material in the paper. Now, the reason that you would lose your material in the paper is the tooth. Bristol board. It has more tooth than marker paper. I would definitely not recommend mixing medias on this paper. You know what is great for mixing medias? Oops. You know what is great for mixing medias though? Mixed media paper. You're welcome. Here's where we're starting to get into the heavy-dutier papers. Now, mixed media paper is super great because it's made for all different kinds of media. Anything from like charcoals, oil pastels, crayons, pencils, markers, paint, you name it, mixed media paper can handle it. Now, it's kind of a matter of like how much you use and how it can handle it well, how you're drying it, things like that. And mixed media paper, generally speaking, is going to go with a multitude of different things and it's going to do them pretty well. I highly recommend tossing a piece of cardboard or something underneath it so that it doesn't bleed into the next piece of paper, but otherwise this stuff is super great, it's super sturdy, and it holds its own. This particular sketchbook is bigger than I usually like to work, so I thought that it would be a really great challenge for me to have this size, but you know, it's really fun, and I absolutely love this particular brand of mixed media paper more than most others. I don't know why, it just really works for me, and I highly, highly recommend. So there is that on mixed media paper. Now we are on to watercolor paper. I have two different sizes here, but they both happen to be the same poundage, which means they are also going to be the same tooth. These are 140-pound papers, so this is like a really solid mid-grade watercolor paper. Now, what's really interesting about watercolor paper is stretching. Whenever you have paper that's anything less than 300-pound paper, you're going to need to stretch it over a canvas if you want to avoid warping. So the way that you would do that is to lay out a piece of wood that's really thin, you know, something like a 3-plywood kind of thing, and you take a staple gun and you put your paper out, and then you staple gun around all the edges, like super close to the edge. And then the last thing that you do is you get some sort of tape, and then just make sure that you stick it to your pants or something first so that you don't like rip the paper whenever you pull the tape off, because it's really freaking sad. Like, I can't tell you how many pieces I ruined in college at the end because I had the wrong tape on the edges of my paper. Avoid that. I got a couple of different sizes because, like I was kind of mentioning earlier, I'm weird about my size paper. Square, tiny paper inspires me more than large pieces of paper. Now, I know that I could cut the square paper out of this paper, but I didn't want to, so I bought both. Duh, I just want to draw all the things in these. Watercolor paper is amazingly absorbent, and the higher the tooth, the higher the absorbency. So you can work with lots and lots of layers on 300-pound paper. The lower that you go, the less layering you're going to be able to do without muddying up or tearing up your paper. Definitely just keep in mind these kinds of things whenever you're working with your medias so that you don't like mess yourself up. There's a couple other like random facts and things that I want to say about paper that I want you to know, so here they are. There's a whole bunch of different kinds of papers, and a couple of them I don't think I talked about, so I just want to run through them really quick. We're going to start at the bottom of the barrel, and then we're going to work our way back up. So I would first like to start with newsprint. Newsprint is like the worst paper. It's kind of like the throwaway, trashy stuffing paper of the art world. I hate newsprint. I hate the way it feels. I hate the way it smells. I do not work with newsprint anymore. So there's that. Drawing paper is a little bit more sturdy than your average sketchbook paper, and it's going to be a little bit more rigid. Drawing paper is really great, of course, for graphite and other things, but I really like it for charcoal too, so that's another fun thing to learn. If you're working with charcoal on any kind of paper, I highly recommend you buy a sealer and put it on there because it will keep it attached to the paper and not on your floor or your hand or your cat. There's also tracing paper. Tracing paper is kind of like an overlooked buddy, but I use it all the time in my work. I use it to transfer things, so whenever I have something that's really awesome in my sketchbook that I want to take directly out of there and put onto a piece, I'll grab myself a piece of tracing paper, trace it, and then flip it around and do the graphite transfer by scratching it, just like when you were a kid. It's a good time. It's a great time. Another weird, like, fancy paper that I really like that's kind of crazy is called Yupo paper. This is a water-resistant paper that's similar to vellum paper if you've ever done scrapbooking. That weird clear stuff that kind of goes on top and makes things look fancy. It's like that, but it's for watercolor. So whenever you're working with this stuff, you pool the watercolors on top of it in order to create depth and value. It's amazing. I absolutely recommend it if you ever want to just like treat yourself to a crazy experience, because Yupo paper is unlike anything I've ever worked with in my life. I did a really, really amazing piece back in college and I still have it hanging in my apartment. It's my favorite thing I've ever done. It's a big Maneki Neko cat, and the Yupo paper just really helped the shininess of the whole thing come across, because the darkest pools of it are actually reflective because of the way that they dried. So it's really good. It's really good. I love Yupo paper. I will sing its praises to the ends of the earth, even though it is a nightmare to work with. It's so fun. And y'all, it's so smooth. It's like ice skating for your hands. It's so cool. Those are my random little paper facts. Of course, there are all different kinds of other paper. There's stationery paper, there's origami paper, there's scrapbooking paper. There's so many different kind of papers and I love touching them all. So I hope that you guys enjoyed me talking about the different papers and the kinds of things that I love, because it was really fun for me and I hope that you learned something and that it was helpful to you. Do you have any questions about paper? Do you have any questions about materials? Do you have like anything, any questions about anything art related that I can answer? Please let me know in the comments below, because I would so love to answer those for you. And it would help me get ideas for more videos that you want to see. That's important to me. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and check out me and the rest of the Weirdlings at theweirdlings.com. We have an amazing anime podcast that Shannon and I love working on, so if you haven't heard Fem Service yet or haven't seen our really awesome spoopy video from Halloween, then I highly recommend checking those out. I hope you have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!